Some loves don't end. They go silent, waiting for the moment they are forced to speak again. I'm going to tell you the story of Lauren Hayes and Beatrice Sullivan, two women bound by a past that never truly let them go, and by a city that remembers everything. It begins in Charleston, South Carolina, on the day Lauren returns for a funeral she swore she'd never attend. A closed casket, a house full of ghosts, and a past she believed was buried. Then she sees her, standing in the shadows, a look that still knows her. A presence that changes the air. Because this isn't just a reunion. It's a wound reopening, and a truth that refuses to stay hidden. A secret was kept. A choice was stolen. And now, nothing will be the same again. This is not just a story about love. It's a story about fear, loss, forgiveness, and the courage to return to who you really are. Stay with me, and let this story unfold. The casket was closed when Lauren arrived, and that felt like a mercy, because it meant she wouldn't have to look at that face one last time. The same face that had stared at her with contempt on that August night over 10 years ago, when he told her she was no longer his daughter, if she insisted on being what she was. Lauren Hayes had sworn never to return to Charleston, not while he was still breathing. But now he wasn't breathing, and here she was, standing at the entrance of the family home, feeling the weight of every decision that had brought her to this moment. The Charleston air felt heavy in her lungs in a strange way. It wasn't just the humidity rising from the harbor or the January sun beating down mercilessly on the cobblestone streets. It was something more visceral, something Lauren had buried so deep she thought she'd never feel it again. But Charleston had that power. The historic city, with its pastel-painted antebellum homes and towering church steeples, held secrets on every corner, and Lauren knew hers was waiting like a silent trap. She touched the weathered wooden door, the same one she'd crossed through thousands of times as a child, when she still believed her father was a hero. The door opened slowly, hinges squeaking with rust, and on the other side appeared Rosa, the housekeeper who had worked for the Hayes family for nearly 30 years. "Miss Lauren," Rosa said, with a mixture of surprise and something that might have been compassion, "I didn't think you'd come." "Neither did I," Lauren replied, her voice steady, but loaded with irony. Rosa said nothing more. She simply stepped aside and let Lauren enter the house where she'd grown up, where she'd learned to walk, to read, to lie about who she really was. The main parlor was filled with people dressed in black. Some looked at her with curiosity, others with barely disguised disapproval. Lauren recognized some distant cousins, neighbors, townspeople who probably didn't remember her name but certainly remembered her scandal. In the center of the room, in front of the improvised altar with candles and white magnolias, stood her father's casket. Closed, sealed, final. Lauren moved forward slowly, feeling how each step echoed across the old hardwood floors. Her heart was beating with a violence she hadn't expected. She thought she'd feel relief, maybe even peace. But what she felt was rage. A dull, ancient rage she'd tried to drown with years of therapy in Atlanta, with obsessive work as an architect, with relationships that never lasted because no one could fill the void he'd left when he threw her out. She stopped in front of the casket. Her hands were trembling. She wanted to scream. She wanted to open that box and ask him why. Why he'd chosen to lose her rather than accept her. Why he'd chosen pride over love. "Lauren." The voice pulled her from her trance. She turned and saw her younger sister, Sophie, approaching with eyes swollen from crying. Sophie had always been the perfect daughter, the one who stayed, the one who married a man from a good family, the one who never questioned anything. "I didn't think you'd come," Sophie said, in a tone Lauren couldn't quite read. Was it accusation? Relief? "Neither did I," Lauren repeated, because she had no other answer. Sophie hugged her, It was an awkward embrace, full of years of silence and unspoken reproaches. Lauren let herself be hugged because she had no strength to resist. When they separated, Sophie looked at her with something like pity. "He asked about you," Sophie said quietly. "At the end. Before he was gone." Lauren felt something break inside her. She didn't want to hear that. She didn't want to know that her father had thought about her in his final moments. She didn't want to carry that guilt. "It doesn't matter," Lauren lied, but it did matter. It mattered more than she was willing to admit. Subscribe now. YouTube prioritizes subscribers, and those who aren't subscribed miss out on future stories. The ceremony began shortly after. Father Thomas, the same priest who had baptized Lauren 35 years ago, spoke about Richard Hayes' goodness, about his commitment to the community, about his love for his family. Lauren listened to each word with a mixture of disbelief and nausea. Love for his family? That man had thrown her out of his life like she was garbage. That man had chosen appearances over truth. While Father Thomas continued speaking, Lauren let her gaze wander around the room. And then, she saw her. In the back corner, almost hidden among the shadows cast by the candles, there was a woman. She wasn't old, but she wasn't young either. She'd be about 40 years old, maybe less. She wore a simple black dress without adornments, and her auburn hair was pulled back in a braid that fell over her shoulder. But what caught Lauren's attention most were her eyes. Dark, deep, fixed on her. The woman wasn't crying. She didn't seem moved. She was just watching. And there was something in that gaze that made Lauren feel a chill run down her spine. Who was this woman? Lauren mentally went through the familiar faces. She didn't remember her. She'd never seen her before. Or so she thought. The ceremony ended, and people began approaching the casket to say goodbye. Lauren stayed back, unwilling to participate in that hypocritical ritual. But her eyes kept returning to the corner where the woman in the black dress stood. And every time she looked, the woman was also looking at her. Finally, when most of the attendees began moving toward the dining room where Rosa had prepared coffee and sweet tea, Lauren decided she had to know who this woman was. She approached slowly, crossing the room while people murmured condolences she didn't feel. The woman didn't move. She just waited, with that same serene expression Lauren couldn't decipher. "Excuse me," Lauren said when she was close enough. "I don't think we know each other." The woman looked at her for a long moment, as if deciding what to say. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but loaded with something Lauren couldn't identify. "We know each other, Lauren, though you don't remember me." Lauren frowned. How could this woman know her if she'd never seen her? "Did we meet here, in Charleston?" The woman nodded slowly. "A long time ago. You were different then. Younger. More. Free." Lauren felt the air escape from her lungs. There was something in the way this woman spoke. Something familiar and terrifying at the same time. "Who are you?" The woman smiled barely, a sad smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Beatrice. Beatrice Sullivan." The name hit Lauren like a punch. Beatrice. That name. She'd buried it along with everything else, along with the memories of that summer, those hidden nights, those promises she could never keep. "No, it can't be," Lauren murmured, taking a step back. "It can," Beatrice said, with that same unsettling calm. "And here I am." Lauren felt the world around her begin to blur. The voices of people, the smell of incense, the weight of her black clothes, everything became distant. There was only her and Beatrice, and between them, the ghost of a past Lauren had tried to kill. "Why are you here?" Lauren asked, her voice barely audible. Beatrice didn't respond immediately. She let the silence extend, dense and loaded with everything that hadn't been said in more than 10 years. "I came for your father," Beatrice finally said. "But I also came for you." Lauren felt tears begin to prick at her eyes, but she held them back. She wasn't going to cry. Not here, not in front of her. "I have nothing to talk to you about," Lauren lied. "I think you do," Beatrice replied. And in her tone there was something that sounded dangerously close to certainty. "Your father reached out to me before he died, Lauren. He told me things you need to know." Lauren felt the floor move beneath her feet. Her father had sought out Beatrice. Why? What had he said? What secrets had he confessed before closing his eyes forever? "I'm not interested," Lauren lied again, but her voice trembled. "Yes, you are," Beatrice said, taking a step closer. "Because what he told me changes everything. Changes what happened between us. Changes why you left. Changes everything." Lauren couldn't take it anymore. She turned and walked out of the room, feeling how the stares of the attendees followed her. She crossed the interior courtyard of the house, passed by the stone fountain where she used to play as a child, and reached the back garden where the magnolia trees bloomed with that sweet, melancholic perfume that had always reminded her of her childhood. She let herself fall onto the wrought iron bench her mother had placed there decades ago, before dying of cancer when Lauren was only 12 years old. She breathed deeply, trying to calm the whirlwind that had unleashed in her chest. Beatrice, after so many years, after so much pain, how was it possible? Memories began to filter through, one after another, like a hemorrhage she could no longer stop. 10 years earlier, August 2015. Lauren was 25 years old and had just finished her architecture degree in New York. She'd returned to Charleston for the summer, intending to spend a few months with her father before moving permanently to Atlanta, where she'd been offered a job at a prestigious firm. Charleston in summer was different. The historic streets filled with tourists, the cafes along the Battery overflowed with life, and the nights were warm, full of music drifting from the jazz clubs on King Street. Lauren felt free then, away from the expectations of university, from the critical looks of her professors, from the constant pressure of having to prove she was good enough. One August afternoon, while walking through the city market looking for a gift for Sophie, she literally bumped into someone. The books that person was carrying fell to the ground, and Lauren hurried to help pick them up. "I'm so sorry," Lauren said, crouching down. "Don't worry about it," a soft voice replied. Lauren looked up and found herself face to face with the most profound eyes she'd ever seen in her life. The woman in front of her was around 30 years old, with auburn hair falling in natural waves over her shoulders, and a smile that seemed to hold secrets. "I'm Beatrice," the woman introduced herself, extending her hand. "Lauren," she responded, feeling something strange move in her stomach when their hands touched. "Are you from here?" Beatrice asked, while arranging the books in her bag. "Yes and no," Lauren said with a smile. "I was born here, but I studied in New York. I'm visiting." "I'm visiting too," Beatrice said. "Well, sort of. I came to work on a restoration project for a historic home. I'm an art historian." Lauren felt immediate interest. There was something about Beatrice that attracted her, something beyond her evident beauty. There was an intelligence in her eyes, a genuine curiosity when she spoke. They ended up having coffee at a terrace overlooking White Point Garden. They talked for hours, about architecture and art, about Charleston's history, about their lives. Beatrice told her she was from Savannah, that she'd studied in Europe, that she loved old buildings because they held stories no one else remembered. And Lauren told her things she hadn't told anyone, about how she felt trapped between what her father expected of her and what she really wanted, about how she'd spent years denying parts of herself because she was afraid of what people would say, about how sometimes she felt like a building in ruins, beautiful on the outside but empty within. Beatrice listened without judgment. And when Lauren finished speaking, Beatrice simply said, "Buildings in ruins can be restored. You just need to find someone who understands their value." That was the first night. There were many more after that. Lauren began finding excuses to see Beatrice. They'd meet to walk along the cobblestone streets at sunset, to visit galleries on Broad Street, to sit in hidden cafes where no one knew them. And with each encounter, Lauren felt something inside her awakening. Something she'd kept dormant for so long she'd almost forgotten it existed. One night in mid-August, after dinner at a small restaurant near the waterfront, Beatrice took her to a special place. It was an abandoned rooftop terrace atop a colonial mansion that was being restored. From there, you could see all of Charleston, the golden lights of the historic homes, the church spires illuminated against the night sky, the stars shining with an intensity you only saw away from big cities. "This is my favorite place," Beatrice said, sitting on the edge of the terrace with her legs dangling. "I come here when I need to think." Lauren sat beside her, feeling the cool night air caress her skin. They were silent for a while, just listening to the distant sounds of the city. "What do you think about when you come here?" Lauren finally asked. Beatrice looked at her, and in her eyes there was something Lauren hadn't seen before, something vulnerable. "I think about all the lives I'm not living," Beatrice said. "About all the decisions I made that brought me here. About all the people I could have been." Lauren felt her heart race. There was something in the way Beatrice spoke, something intimate and painful. "Do you regret any of it?" Lauren asked, her voice barely a whisper. Beatrice shook her head slowly. "No, because every decision brought me to this moment. And this moment." She paused, turning completely to look at Lauren. "This moment is perfect." And then it happened. Beatrice leaned toward her, slowly, giving Lauren time to pull away if she wanted. But Lauren didn't pull away. She closed her eyes and felt Beatrice's lips against hers, soft and warm, full of a promise Lauren didn't know if she could keep. The kiss lasted only a few seconds, but for Lauren it was as if time had stopped. When they separated, Lauren had tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," Beatrice said, alarmed. "I didn't mean to." "No," Lauren interrupted, shaking her head. "It's not that. It's just that. I've never felt this before. I've never allowed myself to feel this." Beatrice took her hand and squeezed it gently. "Then feel it now," she said. "Even if it's just for tonight." But it wasn't just that night. There were many more nights. Nights on that hidden terrace. Nights at the house where Beatrice was staying. Stolen nights where Lauren allowed herself to be who she really was, without masks, without fear. During the day, Lauren continued being the perfect daughter. She had lunch with her father, helped around the house, pretended to be thinking about the future he had planned for her. But at night, when everyone was sleeping, she'd sneak out to meet Beatrice. And each night she fell a little more in love. Beatrice was different from anyone Lauren had ever known. She was intelligent without being arrogant, passionate without being dramatic, strong, yet vulnerable. She talked about authors Lauren had never read, about artists who defied norms, about women who had lived extraordinary lives simply by being themselves. "Have you ever wondered why they teach us to hide?" Beatrice asked one night, while they were lying in bed staring at the ceiling. "All the time," Lauren responded. "It's because they know that if we show ourselves as we are, if we stop pretending, the world would have to change," Beatrice said. "And people are terrified of change." Lauren turned her head to look at her. "Aren't you afraid?" Beatrice smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Of course I'm afraid. Every day. But I've learned that fear doesn't disappear by waiting. It disappears when you decide to live despite it." Lauren wanted to be that brave. She wanted to be able to live without fear. But every time she thought about telling her father the truth, about telling him about Beatrice, about admitting what she felt, Panic paralyzed her. Beatrice never pressured her. She never demanded she choose. She just gave her space to be herself, to explore what she felt without judgments or expectations. But time in Charleston was running out. Lauren had to return to Atlanta in 2 weeks, and the mere idea of leaving Beatrice seemed unbearable. One night, while they were having dinner at a small restaurant outside the historic district, Lauren gathered the courage to speak. "I don't want this to end," she said, her voice trembling. Beatrice set down her wine glass and took Lauren's hand across the table. "Then it doesn't have to end," she said. "We can find a way. Atlanta isn't that far. I can travel. You can come on weekends." Lauren wanted to believe it. She wanted to believe they could have a life together, that they could overcome the distance, the secrets, the weight of everything that being together meant. "But it's not just the distance," Lauren said, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "It's my father. It's my family. It's everything." "I know," Beatrice said, squeezing her hand. "And I'm not going to ask you to choose. I'm just going to ask you not to choose out of fear. Not to give up on this because someone else told you that you can't have it." Lauren nodded, but inside, she knew it wasn't that simple. 2 days later, everything fell apart. Lauren had arrived late for dinner. Her father was waiting for her in the dining room, with an expression she'd never seen before. Cold, distant, furious. "Where were you?" Richard Hayes asked, his voice sharp as a knife. "I was with a friend," Lauren lied, feeling panic begin to grow in her chest. "With a friend?" her father repeated, with a tone loaded with sarcasm. "Is that what you call it now?" Lauren felt her blood run cold. "What are you talking about?" Her father stood up from the table and walked toward her. In his hand, he held a phone. Lauren's phone. "Mrs. Carmichael saw you last night," her father said, with a calm that was more terrifying than any scream. "She saw you leaving a house with that woman." Lauren felt the world crumbling around her. "Dad, No," her father interrupted. "You don't have to explain anything. I've understood everything. And now you're going to understand something. In this family, there's no place for that. There's no place for whatever you think you are." Tears began falling down Lauren's cheeks. "But Dad, I didn't choose." "I don't care," her father cut her off. "I don't care what excuses you have. I don't care what they told you in New York. This is Charleston, not New York City. Here, things are done a certain way. And if you can't understand that, if you can't be who I raised you to be, then you're not my daughter." Lauren felt something fundamental break inside her, something that could never be repaired. "Are you throwing me out?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I'm giving you a choice," her father said. "You end things with that woman, you forget all this, and you go on with your life the way it should be. Or you leave, and you don't come back." Lauren looked at him, searching for some trace of compassion, some sign that he still loved her. But she only saw disappointment and rage. "I can't end things with her," Lauren said, though each word hurt. "I can't pretend this didn't happen." Her father nodded slowly, as if he'd expected that answer. "Then leave." Lauren went up to her room with trembling hands. She packed the essentials in a suitcase. She grabbed her phone and sent a message to Beatrice. "I have to leave. My father knows. I'm sorry." She left the house without looking back. She didn't say goodbye to Sophie, who was in her room. She didn't look at the courtyard fountain. She didn't look at the magnolia trees in the garden. She just left. She took a bus that same night and arrived in Atlanta at dawn. And during the following days, while trying to process what had happened, she waited for Beatrice to call, to tell her everything would be okay, that they'd find a way. But Beatrice never called. Lauren tried to reach her. She sent messages, emails, even tried calling the hotel where she was staying. But there was no response. It was as if Beatrice had disappeared. And Lauren came to a painful conclusion. Beatrice had decided she wasn't worth fighting for, that Lauren wasn't worth it. So Lauren forced herself to forget. She immersed herself in work, in her new life in Atlanta. She built armor around herself and swore she'd never let anyone hurt her like that again. Until today. Until she saw Beatrice in the corner of the room, looking at her as if all those years hadn't passed. If any part of this story feels like your life, the hype button helps keep it from staying silent. Lauren stayed in the garden for what seemed like hours, though it was really only 20 minutes. The sun was beginning to set behind the Ashley River, painting the sky in oranges and pinks that contrasted painfully with the darkness she felt in her chest. The magnolia trees swayed their branches with the soft evening breeze, and Lauren remembered all the afternoons of her childhood in that same garden, when the world was simple and she still believed her father was invincible. The sound of footsteps on the gravel pulled her from her thoughts. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. She could feel Beatrice's presence like an electric current in the air. "May I sit?" Beatrice asked, her voice soft but firm. Lauren didn't respond, but she didn't object either. Beatrice sat on the other end of the bench, maintaining a respectful distance, but close enough that Lauren could feel the warmth of her body. The silence extended between them, dense and loaded with everything that hadn't been said in 10 years. Lauren wanted to scream, wanted to demand explanations, wanted to know why Beatrice had disappeared without giving a single explanation. But the words got stuck in her throat. "Your father reached out to me 3 months ago," Beatrice finally said, breaking the silence. "He called me directly. I don't know how he got my number, but he did." Lauren felt her body tense. 3 months? Her father had been sick for almost a year, but the last 3 months had been especially difficult, according to what Sophie had told her in the scarce messages they exchanged. "What did he want?" Lauren asked, without looking at her yet. Beatrice took a deep breath, as if gathering the courage to say something she'd been keeping for too long. "He wanted to apologize." Lauren turned her head sharply, looking at Beatrice for the first time since she'd sat down. "Apologize?" she repeated, with disbelief. "Apologize to you? And what about me?" "He wanted to apologize to you too," Beatrice said, looking directly into her eyes. "But he knew you'd never accept a call from him. So he asked me to find you after he was gone." Lauren felt rage begin to boil inside her. "You have no right," she said, her voice trembling. "You have no right to come here and tell me my father wanted to apologize after 10 years of silence. After throwing me out like I was trash." "I know," Beatrice said, with a calm that only made Lauren angrier. "And you have every right to be furious. But you need to hear what he told me, Lauren, because it's not just about him. It's about us." Lauren stood up from the bench abruptly, taking a few steps toward the magnolias. She didn't want to hear this. She didn't want Beatrice to come into her life after so long and tell her there was more pain waiting. "You disappeared," Lauren said, without turning around. "You left without giving any explanations, without answering my calls, my messages, nothing. And now you come here, to my father's funeral, and you expect me to just listen to you as if nothing happened." There was a long silence. Lauren could hear the sound of her own breathing, agitated and uneven. "You're right," Beatrice finally said, her voice loaded with an emotion Lauren hadn't heard before. "I disappeared, and there's no excuse for that. But there was a reason." Lauren turned slowly. "What reason?" she asked, with a tone that mixed hope and skepticism. Beatrice stood up from the bench and walked toward her, but stopped a few feet away, as if afraid that getting too close might make her flee. "Your father found me that summer," Beatrice said. "After you left, he showed up at the hotel where I was staying. I don't know how he knew where you were, but he did. Lauren felt the air escape from her lungs. Her father had sought out Beatrice, after throwing her out. "What did he tell you?" Lauren asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. Beatrice lowered her gaze, as if remembering that moment physically hurt her. "He told me that if I truly loved you, if I really cared about you, I had to let you go. He told me I was ruining your life, that I was destroying your future. He told me you had a brilliant career ahead in Atlanta, that you were going to meet someone appropriate, that you were going to have a normal life." Lauren felt tears begin to slide down her cheeks. "And you believed him," she said with bitterness. "No," Beatrice replied, looking at her again. "I didn't believe him. But he didn't stop there. He told me that if I didn't disappear, if I tried to keep contacting you, he'd make sure I could never work on any restoration project in the South again. He knew people, had connections, and I..." She paused, her voice breaking. "I had just started my career. I'd just gotten my first major job, and I was scared." Lauren felt something inside her shatter into pieces. Beatrice hadn't abandoned her because she didn't love her. She'd abandoned her because her father had threatened her. "But that doesn't justify you disappearing without telling me anything," Lauren said, though her voice had lost part of its fury. "You could have told me the truth." "I know," Beatrice said, tears now visible in her eyes too. "And that was my cowardice. I thought if I told you the truth, you'd try to fight against him. And I was afraid that would destroy you. I was afraid you'd have to choose between him and me, and that whatever your choice was, you'd end up hurt." Lauren let herself fall against the trunk of a magnolia, feeling her strength abandon her. "You hurt me anyway," she said quietly. "I know," Beatrice whispered, "and I've carried that guilt for 10 years. The silence enveloped them again, but this time it was different. It wasn't the silence loaded with rage, but the silence of shared pain. "What else did he tell you?" Lauren asked after a long moment. "When he called you 3 months ago." Beatrice approached slowly and sat on the ground next to the magnolia, at Lauren's feet. It was a gesture of vulnerability, almost of surrender. "He told me he was dying," Beatrice began, "and that before leaving, he needed to make things right. He told me that what he did to you was unforgivable, that he destroyed his relationship with you because he was afraid. Afraid of what the neighbors would say, afraid of what people at church would say, afraid of losing the respect he'd built his entire life." Lauren clenched her fists. "He chose his pride over me." "Yes," Beatrice confirmed. "But he told me that in the end, all he accomplished was losing you anyway. He told me that for 10 years, he lived with the regret of having thrown you out, that he missed you every day, that he wanted to call you 1,000 times but didn't know how." "He could have just called," Lauren said with bitterness. "I know," Beatrice said, "but pride is a poison, Lauren. It eats you from the inside until you no longer know how to ask for forgiveness, even when it's the only thing you want." Lauren closed her eyes, feeling the weight of all that truth settle upon her. Her father had lived with regret. Her father had missed her. But he never had the courage to tell her directly. "Why did he tell you?" Lauren asked. "Why not Sophie? Why not write a letter?" "Because he knew Sophie wouldn't understand," Beatrice responded. "And because he knew you wouldn't read a letter from him. But he thought that maybe, just maybe, you'd listen if it came from me." Lauren opened her eyes and looked at Beatrice. There was something in her expression, something that went beyond just delivering a message. "Why did you really come?" Lauren asked. "You could have called. You could have sent a message. Why come all the way here?" Beatrice looked at her directly, with an intensity that made Lauren feel a chill run down her spine. "Because I needed to see you," Beatrice said, her voice barely a whisper. Because I've spent 10 years wondering what would have happened if I hadn't been such a coward. Because your father gave me permission to find you, but I had already decided to do it before he died. Lauren felt her heart begin to beat faster. Beatrice. You don't have to say anything, Beatrice interrupted. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect us to go back to where we were. I just needed you to know the truth. To know that I never stopped thinking about you. That I never... Her voice broke. That I never stopped loving you. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with all the weight of a decade of silence. Lauren didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to throw herself into Beatrice's arms, wanted to believe there was still something to salvage between them. But another part, the part that had been hurt and abandoned, screamed that it was too late, that the damage was done. I don't know if I can do this, Lauren finally said. I don't know if I can just forgive everything and move forward as if nothing happened. I'm not asking you to, Beatrice said. I'm just asking you not to close the door yet, to give me the chance to show you I'm not the same person who ran away 10 years ago, to give me the chance to prove to you that I'm worth it. Lauren looked at her for a long moment, searching in her eyes for some sign of doubt, some sign that this was a lie. But she only saw sincerity, and pain, and hope. I don't know how long I'll be here, Lauren said. I only came for the funeral. I have to get back to Atlanta. I know, Beatrice said. But you have to stay at least until tomorrow, right? For the burial. Lauren nodded. Then stay one more day, Beatrice proposed. Just one day. Let me show you something. Let me explain everything your father told me. And after that, if you want to leave and never see me again, I'll understand. Lauren knew she should say no. She knew she should maintain the walls she'd built around her heart. But there was something in the way Beatrice looked at her, something in her voice that made all those defenses begin to crumble. One day, Lauren finally said. Just one day. Beatrice nodded, and for the first time since Lauren had seen her at the funeral, she smiled. It was a small, cautious smile, but genuine. One day, Beatrice repeated. She stood up from the ground and extended her hand to help Lauren up. Lauren hesitated for a moment, but finally took her hand. The contact was electric, as if all those years of distance had evaporated in a second. They walked back to the house in silence, but it was a different silence now. It wasn't the silence of rage or pain. It was the silence of two people who were learning to be close again, carefully, with fear, but with hope. When they arrived at the house, most of the funeral attendees had already left. Only a few close family members and neighbors remained, helping Rosa clean up. Sophie was in the kitchen, organizing the dishes people had brought. Lauren, Sophie said when she saw her come in. I was worried. You disappeared. I needed some air, Lauren responded. Sophie looked at Beatrice, who was behind Lauren, and frowned slightly. And you are Beatrice Sullivan. Beatrice introduced herself, extending her hand. I was a friend of Lauren's years ago, and I knew your father. Sophie shook her hand with some distrust, but said nothing more. The burial is tomorrow at 10, Sophie said, turning to Lauren. At Magnolia Cemetery. Are you going to stay here tonight? Lauren nodded. Yes, I'll stay in my old room. Sophie seemed relieved. Good. Rosa made up your bed, and there's food in the fridge if you're hungry. Lauren thanked her with a gesture and went up the stairs to her room. When she reached the door, she realized Beatrice had followed her. Where are you staying? Lauren asked. At a bed and breakfast near the historic district, Beatrice responded. But, she paused. Can I come see you tomorrow? Before the burial. There's something your father asked me to give you. Lauren felt curiosity mixed with apprehension. What is it? A letter, Beatrice said. He wrote it shortly before he died. He gave it to me and asked me to deliver it to you personally, not by mail or message. In person." Lauren felt tears prick at her eyes again. Her father had written a letter. After 10 years of silence, he'd written a letter. "Come at 8, Lauren said, "before everyone wakes up." Beatrice nodded. "At 8. They looked at each other for one more moment, and Lauren could see in Beatrice's eyes everything they hadn't said, everything that still remained to be said. "Good night, Lauren," Beatrice said softly. "Good night," Lauren responded. Beatrice turned and went down the stairs. Lauren heard her say goodbye to Sophie and Rosa, heard the front door close, and only then did she enter her room. The room was exactly as she'd left it 10 years ago. The bed with the blue comforter, the desk where she'd spent entire nights studying, the window overlooking the back garden. It was like entering a time capsule. Lauren sat on the bed and let the tears flow freely. She cried for everything she'd lost, for all the years of silence, for the father who could never accept her, for the love she'd had to abandon. But she also cried for something else, for hope, for the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was still something to salvage from all that pain. Lauren didn't sleep that night. She stayed awake, staring at the ceiling of her room, listening to the night sounds of the house that had been her home for so long. The clock on the nightstand marked the hours with torturous slowness. 3 in the morning, 4, 5. At 6, when the first rays of sun began filtering through the window, Lauren got up and showered. She dressed in a simple black dress, pulled her hair back in a low ponytail, and went downstairs to the kitchen. Rosa was already awake, making coffee. The house smelled of sweet rolls and that peculiar aroma Lauren associated with the mornings of her childhood. "Good morning, Miss Lauren," Rosa said, surprised to see her so early. "Couldn't sleep?" "Not much," Lauren admitted, pouring herself a cup of coffee. She sat at the kitchen table, the same place where she'd had breakfast thousands of times as a child. Rosa placed in front of her a plate with sweet rolls and fruit. "Your father asked about you," Rosa said softly, while cutting more fruit. "In his last weeks, he'd say your name in his sleep." Lauren felt her throat tighten. "Did he suffer a lot?" Rosa shook her head. "Not at the end. The doctors gave him medicine for the pain. But I think what hurt him most wasn't his body. It was his heart." Lauren didn't know how to respond to that. She took a sip of coffee and let the silence fill the kitchen. At exactly 8 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Lauren felt her heart race. She got up from the table and walked to the door. When she opened it, Beatrice was there, dressed in black pants and a simple white blouse. In her hands, she carried a manila envelope. "Good morning," Beatrice said. "Good morning," Lauren responded, stepping aside. "Come in." Beatrice entered and Lauren guided her to the back garden, away from Rosa's ears and Sophie's, who was still sleeping. They sat on the same bench where they'd talked the day before. The morning sun illuminated the magnolias with a soft, golden light. It was beautiful, and Lauren felt a pang of nostalgia for all the mornings she'd lost here. Beatrice extended the envelope to her. "This is for you," she said. "Your father gave it to me 2 weeks ago. He made me promise I'd deliver it by hand, no matter what." Lauren took the envelope with trembling hands. It was heavy. Inside were several pages written by hand. She immediately recognized her father's handwriting. "Did you read it?" Lauren asked. Beatrice shook her head. "No, it's for you. Only for you." Lauren slowly opened the envelope and pulled out the pages. There were at least 5 sheets, filled with her father's irregular handwriting. She began to read. "Lauren, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And it means Beatrice kept her promise to find you. I hope you can forgive her for leaving. I asked her to do it. It was my fault, not hers. I don't know where to start this letter. I've tried to write it hundreds of times in recent months, and every time the words seem insufficient. How do you ask forgiveness for destroying your own daughter? How do you explain that fear can turn a father into a monster? When I threw you out of the house that August night, I thought I was protecting our family. I thought I was saving your reputation, your future. I thought if I separated you from Beatrice, eventually you'd find the right path. But I was wrong. So terribly wrong. What I was really doing was protecting my own fear. Fear of what the neighbors would say. Fear of what they'd say at church. Fear of losing the respect I'd built my entire life in Charleston. And in that fear, I lost the most important thing, you. For 10 years I've lived with the weight of that decision. Every birthday of yours that passed without being able to call you. Every Christmas without seeing you. Every achievement of yours that Sophie told me about and I pretended not to care. But I cared, Lauren. I cared so much it hurt. When they diagnosed me with cancer a year ago, I thought it no longer mattered. I thought I'd leave without being able to fix it. But then Sophie showed me a photo of you she found online, of a building you designed in Atlanta. You looked beautiful, professional, successful, but you also looked lonely. And I realized that my pride hadn't just cost me, it had cost you too. So I searched for Beatrice. It took me months to find her. She changed cities, phone numbers, but I succeeded. And when I finally spoke with her, I asked for her forgiveness. I asked for forgiveness for having threatened her, for having destroyed what you two had, for being a coward. And she forgave me, Lauren. Despite everything I did to her, she forgave me. And she told me something I'll never forget. What hurts me most isn't what you did to me. It's what you did to Lauren, because she loved you, and you broke that love. She was right. I broke your love for me. And I don't expect you to be able to forgive me. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I do hope you can find a way to be happy, even without me in your life. If Beatrice still loves you, please don't reject her because of me. Don't let my mistake rob you of a second chance to be happy. And if you don't want anything with her, if the damage was too great, I understand that too. But please, my daughter, don't let fear control you the way it controlled me. Don't let what people say prevent you from being who you really are. You're my daughter. You always were. And you always will be. And I deeply regret not having had the courage to tell you that while I could still look you in the eyes. I love you, Lauren. I always loved you, even when I didn't know how to show it. Your father, Richard Hayes. Lauren finished reading, and tears fell freely down her cheeks. The pages trembled in her hands. She felt something inside her break and rebuild at the same time. Beatrice said nothing. She just moved closer and gently placed a hand on Lauren's shoulder, letting her cry. He loved me, Lauren whispered between sobs. In his way, he loved me. He always loved you, Beatrice said softly. He just didn't know how to show it. Lauren carefully folded the pages and put them back in the envelope. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand and looked at Beatrice. Did he tell you anything else? Anything not in the letter? Beatrice nodded. He told me that if you gave me another chance, if you decided to give what we had a chance, to tell you he gave you his blessing. That you no longer had to hide. That you no longer had to be afraid. Lauren felt a new wave of tears threaten to overflow, but she held them back. It's too late for his blessing, Lauren said with bitterness. 10 years too late. I know, Beatrice said, but maybe it's not too late for us. Lauren looked at her. In Beatrice's eyes, she saw hope, vulnerability, fear. She saw everything she herself was feeling. I don't know if I can trust you again, Lauren admitted. I know you had your reasons for leaving, but that doesn't change the fact that you left me when I needed you most. You're right, Beatrice said, and I'm going to have to live with that for the rest of my life. But Lauren, if you give me the chance, I'll spend every day proving to you that I won't run away again, that this time I'll stay, no matter what." Lauren wanted to believe her. God, how much she wanted to believe her. But there was so much pain between them, so much lost time. "I need time," Lauren finally said. "I can't just say everything's fine and move forward as if nothing happened. I need to process all this. I need to understand what I really feel." "I understand," Beatrice said. "And I'll give you all the time you need. But..." She hesitated for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" "What?" "After the burial, can I show you something? A place. It won't take long. And afterward, if you want to go to Atlanta and never see me again, I'll respect that." Lauren thought about it for a moment. Part of her wanted to say no, wanted to put distance between them before she got hurt again. But another part, the part that still remembered what it felt like to be in Beatrice's arms, the part that still kept those summer memories like a hidden treasure, wanted to say yes. "Okay," Lauren finally said. "After the burial." Beatrice smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise after a storm. If this doesn't deserve a like, I don't know what does. The burial was brief and painful. Father Thomas spoke words Lauren barely heard. Sophie cried over the casket as it was lowered into the earth. Neighbors and family members approached one by one to offer condolences, with expressions of compassion Lauren received mechanically. Beatrice kept her distance during the entire ceremony, watching from afar with that same serene expression Lauren had seen at the funeral. She didn't approach the grave. She didn't speak to anyone. She just waited. When it was all over, when the casket was covered with earth and flowers placed on the fresh grave, Lauren approached Sophie. "I have to do something," Lauren said. "I'll be back to the house later." Sophie looked at her curiously, then looked toward where Beatrice was waiting. "Does it have to do with her?" Sophie asked. Lauren nodded. "Yes," Sophie sighed. "Lauren, I know Dad wasn't perfect. I know he hurt you, but be careful. I don't want to see you suffer again." "Thanks, Sophie," Lauren said, using her sister's childhood nickname, "but I need to do this." Sophie hugged her briefly, and then left with the others to the community hall, where lunch would be served after the burial. Lauren walked toward where Beatrice stood. The cemetery was almost empty now. Only a few workers remained closing graves and collecting tools. The midday sun beat down mercilessly on the stone markers. "Ready?" Beatrice asked when Lauren reached her side. "I think so," Lauren responded. "Where are we going?" "You'll see," Beatrice said, with a mysterious smile. They walked in silence to the cemetery parking lot. Beatrice had a rental car, a modest gray sedan. She opened the passenger door for Lauren, a chivalrous gesture that made Lauren feel a pang of nostalgia for all the small details she'd loved about Beatrice. They drove through Charleston's cobblestone streets, passing by the Battery where tourists walked taking photos, through the art galleries that flanked the historic streets, through the cafes where Lauren and Beatrice had spent so many afternoons 10 years ago. But they didn't stop at any of those places. Beatrice kept driving until they left downtown, climbing the hills that surrounded the historic district. Lauren recognized the route. It was the same one they'd taken that August night, toward the abandoned colonial mansion with the rooftop terrace. "Are we going to..." Lauren began. "Yes," Beatrice confirmed. "But wait and see." They arrived at the colonial mansion. But it was no longer abandoned. The facade had been completely restored, painted in a warm terracotta tone. The wooden doors gleamed with fresh varnish. The garden that had been full of weeds was now manicured, with magnolias climbing the walls. Beatrice parked the car and turned off the engine. "What is this?" Lauren asked, confused. "Come on," Beatrice said, getting out of the car. Lauren followed her to the entrance. Beatrice took a key from her pocket and opened the main door. They entered a beautiful interior courtyard with a stone fountain in the center and flower pots that filled the air with fragrance. "Beatrice, what is this place?" Lauren asked, increasingly confused. "It's mine," Beatrice said simply. "Well, technically I bought it 5 years ago. And for those 5 years, I've been restoring it little by little." Lauren looked around, amazed. The restoration was impeccable. The original colonial arches had been preserved, the antique tile floors carefully restored, the wooden ceiling beams reinforced but maintaining their original character. "Why did you buy this house?" Lauren asked. Beatrice looked at her with an intensity that made Lauren feel a knot in her stomach. "Because it was our place," she said. "Because every time I thought about you, I thought about that terrace, and I couldn't bear the idea of someone else having it, of someone else making memories there." Lauren felt tears begin to form in her eyes again. "Come on," Beatrice said, taking her hand. "I want to show you something." They went up the stairs to the second floor, and then up a narrower staircase to the rooftop terrace. And when Lauren reached the top, she was breathless. The terrace had been completely transformed. Where there had only been cracked concrete before, there was now treated wooden flooring. There were plants in pots, hanging lights, comfortable cushions. But the most surprising thing was the view. From there, you could see all of Charleston spreading out below, the church domes, the colorful historic homes, the harbor in the distance. "It's beautiful," Lauren whispered. "I did it thinking of you," Beatrice said. "Every detail, every color choice, every plant, every light. I did everything imagining that someday, maybe, you could be here with me again." Lauren turned to look at her, and in Beatrice's eyes she saw a truth that left her speechless. Beatrice hadn't moved on. She hadn't left her love behind. For 10 years she'd carried it, kept it alive. "Beatrice," Lauren began, but she didn't know what to say. "You don't have to say anything," Beatrice said. "I just wanted you to know I didn't forget you, that I never forgot you, and that if there's even a small part of you that still feels something for me, I'm willing to wait, however long it takes." Lauren felt the walls she'd built around her heart begin to crack. For 10 years she'd tried to convince herself that Beatrice wasn't worth it, that she'd been a coward, that she'd abandoned her. But looking at this house, this terrace, everything Beatrice had built thinking of her, Lauren couldn't deny the truth. Beatrice had loved her. She still loved her. And Lauren, despite all the pain, despite all the years, loved her too. "I don't know if I can do this," Lauren said, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can open myself up again and risk getting hurt." "I know," Beatrice said, slowly moving closer. "And I'm not going to pressure you. But Lauren, look at us. We're still here. After 10 years, after everything that happened, we keep coming back to each other. Doesn't that mean something?" Lauren looked at her, and in that moment, standing on the terrace where it had all begun, she felt something change inside her. She felt fear begin to give way to something stronger, to the possibility of a second chance, to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be happy. "It means something," Lauren admitted quietly. Beatrice smiled, and it was the most beautiful smile Lauren had seen in years. "Then stay," Beatrice said. "It doesn't have to be forever. Just stay a little longer. Let me show you I can be what you need. That I can be strong when you can't. That I can stay when it's hard." Lauren closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She could smell the magnolias growing in the garden below. She could feel the warmth of the afternoon sun on her skin. She could hear the distant sounds of the city. And for the first time in 10 years, she felt something like peace. "Okay," Lauren finally said, opening her eyes. "I'll stay. For now." Beatrice said nothing more. She just stepped forward and hugged Lauren, gently, as if afraid she'd break. and Lauren let herself be hugged, feeling how all the weight she'd carried for a decade began, slowly, to lighten. She didn't know what would happen tomorrow. She didn't know if this would work. She didn't know if they could overcome all the pain and build something new. But in that moment, standing in Beatrice's arms, with the sun setting over Charleston, Lauren decided it was worth trying. Subscribe to find out what happened next. This story is just beginning. The following months were a constant exercise in patience, communication, and faith. Lauren returned to Atlanta, but it no longer felt like an escape. It felt like a temporary place, a transition point toward something new. She and Beatrice talked every day. Video calls in the mornings while having coffee, messages during the day sharing small moments of their lives, phone calls at night where they talked for hours about everything and nothing. Lauren told her about the projects she was designing, about conflicts with difficult clients, about the small victories of the day. Beatrice talked about progress on the house restoration, about new projects she was working on, about her plans to turn part of the house into a small art studio. Every 2 weeks, one of them traveled. Sometimes it was Lauren who took the 3-hour drive to Charleston. Other times it was Beatrice who came to Atlanta. They learned each other's routines, the small habits and quirks. Lauren discovered that Beatrice hummed when she cooked and always left a half-finished cup of tea on the nightstand. Beatrice learned that Lauren woke up early no matter how late she went to sleep, and that she organized her books by color instead of by topic. Not everything was easy. There were arguments. The first one was about something silly, a misunderstanding about when they'd see each other the next weekend. Lauren had assumed Beatrice would come to Atlanta. Beatrice had assumed Lauren would go to Charleston. Neither had confirmed explicitly, and they each ended up waiting for the other. The argument escalated quickly. Lauren accused Beatrice of not being clear, of expecting her to read her mind. Beatrice responded that Lauren always assumed things instead of asking directly. They ended up hanging up angry, each feeling misunderstood and frustrated. Lauren spent the night without sleeping, feeling panic begin to take over. Was this a sign it wouldn't work? That they'd made a mistake trying? But the next morning, when her phone rang and she saw Beatrice's name on the screen, she answered. "I'm sorry," they both said at the same time. They laughed, a nervous but real laugh. "I don't want to fight with you," Beatrice said. "I want this to work." "Me too," Lauren said. "But we have to be better at communicating. We have to tell each other things clearly, even when it's uncomfortable." "Agreed," Beatrice accepted. "And I'm going to try to be more direct. Not assume things are obvious when they're not." That first fight taught them something important. They weren't going to agree on everything. They were going to have misunderstandings. But what mattered was how they handled those conflicts, whether they chose to run away or face them together. 4 months into trying, Lauren made an important decision. She'd been considering it for weeks, weighing options, doing calculations. One afternoon, after a particularly frustrating meeting at her office, she called Beatrice. "What would you think if I moved to Charleston?" she asked without preamble. There was silence on the other end of the line. "Are you serious?" Beatrice finally asked. "Very serious," Lauren said. "I've been thinking about it. I can work remotely for some projects, and Charleston is growing. There are opportunities for architects who understand historic preservation. I could start my own firm, focus on restoration and renovation projects of colonial buildings. Lauren, I don't want you to give up your career for me," Beatrice said, her voice loaded with concern. "I wouldn't be doing it for you," Lauren responded. "I'd be doing it for us, and for me. I'm tired of Atlanta, Beatrice. I'm tired of designing generic buildings for clients who only care about cost. I want to do something that means something. I want to work with history, with memory, with buildings that have soul." Beatrice didn't respond immediately, and Lauren could imagine her processing all this, weighing the implications. "Are you sure?" Beatrice finally asked. "Because Charleston isn't perfect. There are still conservative people, There will still be looks and comments. I know, Lauren interrupted. But I'm not afraid of that anymore, or at least not enough to let it stop me. I want to be where you are. I want to build something with you. Not just a relationship, but a life. Then come, Beatrice said, her voice breaking with emotion. Come and let's build something together. Lauren gave her notice 2 weeks later. Her boss tried to convince her to stay, offered a raise, more flexibility, better projects. But Lauren had already made her decision. She worked her last month in Atlanta with a mixture of nostalgia and anticipation, packing her life in boxes, saying goodbye to colleagues and the few friends she'd made. The move happened in December, almost 8 months after her father's funeral. Sophie and her husband Charles helped, along with Beatrice and some friends Beatrice had made in Charleston. They took the boxes to the Colonial House, which was now officially Lauren's home too. That first night in their new home, Lauren and Beatrice went up to the terrace with a bottle of wine. The city sparkled below them, Christmas lights adorning the streets, the distant sound of carols floating in the cold December air. Are you scared? Beatrice asked, putting an arm around Lauren's shoulders. Terrified, Lauren admitted with a smile. But also excited. It's strange. When I left here 10 years ago, I swore I'd never come back. And now I'm here, choosing to stay. Things take weird turns, Beatrice said. Sometimes you have to leave to be able to come back the right way. Lauren rested her head on Beatrice's shoulder. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For waiting for me. For not giving up. For buying this crazy house and restoring it just because it was our place. Beatrice kissed her head. I'd do it 1,000 times over. The first months in Charleston were an adjustment. Lauren began working on her own architecture firm, focusing on conservation and restoration projects. Her first major project was the renovation of an 18th century home that had been abandoned for decades. Working on that building, bringing life back to walls that had seen generations of families, gave Lauren a sense of purpose she'd never felt in Atlanta. She also had to face the reality of living openly in a small, conservative city. There were stares at the market, murmurs at the church where Sophie still attended. Mrs. Carmichael, the same one who had told on Lauren to her father years ago, once crossed the street to avoid walking next to them. But there were also positive surprises. Father Thomas, the same priest who had presided over Richard's funeral, approached Lauren one day in the town square. Lauren, he said, with that soft voice she remembered from childhood. I wanted to tell you something. Lauren tensed, expecting a sermon about sin and redemption. Your father came to see me, Father Thomas continued. A few months before he died. He talked to me about you, about his regret. And he asked me if God could forgive him for having rejected his own daughter. Lauren felt tears begin to form in her eyes. And what did you tell him? Father Thomas smiled sadly. I told him that God forgives those who truly repent, but that the most important thing was whether you could forgive him. And now I tell you, not everyone in this city will understand your life. Not everyone will approve of it. But true love, the love that builds instead of destroys, that love always deserves to be celebrated. Your father learned that too late. I hope you learn it in time. It was one of the most unexpected and moving moments Lauren had experienced. After that, when facing critical looks or unpleasant comments, she remembered Father Thomas's words. She didn't need everyone's approval. She only needed to live with authenticity. Beatrice also faced her own challenges. Her family came to visit 6 months after Lauren moved. Her mother, a small, soft-voiced woman named Grace, was visibly uncomfortable at first. She barely looked at Lauren, responded with monosyllables when spoken to. But during dinner, something changed. Lauren was telling a story about an old lady who had hired her to renovate her house, and who insisted that the spirits of her ancestors lived in the ceiling beams and had to be consulted before any changes. Lauren imitated the lady's voice and gestures, doing it with so much affection and humor that the entire table burst into laughter. Grace, between laughs, said, "You have a gift for storytelling." "I inherited it from my mother," Lauren responded. "She always found humor in everything, even when things were difficult." Grace looked at her for a long moment, and Lauren could see something soften in her eyes. "Beatrice seems happy," Grace finally said. "Happier than I've seen her in years." "I'm happy too," Lauren responded simply. Grace nodded slowly, as if reaching an internal acceptance. "Then I suppose that's what's important." It wasn't complete acceptance, but it was a beginning. And Lauren learned that sometimes that was enough. A year after moving to Charleston, Lauren and Beatrice organized a small ceremony on their house's terrace. It wasn't legal in South Carolina, not yet, but it was their promise to be together. Sophie was there, along with some close friends, Rosa, and even Beatrice's parents, who had made the trip from Savannah. There was no priest or traditional vows. Instead, each read a letter she'd written to the other. Lauren spoke about how Beatrice had taught her to be brave, to live without asking permission, to choose happiness even when it was difficult. Beatrice spoke about how Lauren had taught her about forgiveness, about second chances, about how true love is worth waiting for. When they finished, they exchanged simple silver rings they'd designed together. And as the sun set over Charleston, their friends and family raised champagne glasses to toast to them. "To Lauren and Beatrice," Sophie said with tears in her eyes, "to love that doesn't give up, to second chances, to building something beautiful from the ruins." "To building something beautiful from the ruins," everyone repeated. That night, after everyone had left, Lauren and Beatrice stayed alone on the terrace. The full moon shone over the city, turning everything into tones of silver and shadow. "Any regrets?" Beatrice asked, half joking, half serious. Lauren looked at her and smiled. "Not one," she said. "Well, maybe one. I wish we hadn't lost 10 years. Maybe we needed them," Beatrice said, "to grow, to learn who we really were, to be able to be here now, ready for this." Lauren knew she was probably right. 10 years ago, neither of them had been ready to face everything that being together meant. They'd needed time to heal, to strengthen themselves, to learn to stand up for themselves. "And now what?" Lauren asked. "Now we live," Beatrice responded simply. "We build our firm. We restore old houses. We fill this terrace with plants. We adopt a dog. We travel to Savannah to visit my family. We convince Sophie to divorce that idiot Charles and live her own life." Lauren laughed. "That's a good plan." "It's our plan," Beatrice corrected. "And we're going to do it together." They kissed under the full moon, on the terrace where it had all begun so many years ago. And for the first time since she could remember, Lauren felt she was exactly where she should be. She didn't know what the future held. There would surely be more challenges, more obstacles. But she was no longer afraid of them. Because now she knew something she hadn't known at 25. True love isn't the absence of problems, but the decision to face them together. And that was a decision Lauren was willing to make every day for the rest of her life. The architecture firm Lauren and Beatrice had founded together, Hayes & Sullivan, Conservation and Restoration, had become one of the most respected in Charleston. They'd worked on over 20 projects, bringing life back to colonial buildings that had been abandoned or mistreated for years. Their unique approach, combining Lauren's architectural experience with Beatrice's historical and artistic knowledge, had made them stand out. The colonial house they'd restored together now housed both their home and their office. The ground floor had been converted into a bright workspace with drafting tables, models of current projects, and walls covered with blueprints and old photographs. The upper floor remained their private space, their refuge. One June afternoon, Lauren was on the terrace reviewing blueprints for their next project, a 17th-century plantation house outside the city. Beatrice came up with 2 glasses of iced lemonade and a mysterious smile. "I have news," Beatrice said. Lauren set down the blueprints and looked at her wife with curiosity. "Good or bad?" "Good. Very good. I was offered to give a series of lectures at the College of Charleston about colonial heritage conservation. It would be for 3 months, once a week." Lauren felt a pang of concern. "In Charleston?" "Yes, but it would only be 1 day a week. I could be back home every evening." Lauren stood up and hugged Beatrice. "That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. Really, it doesn't bother you?" "Why would it bother me?" Lauren asked. "It's an incredible opportunity, and I trust you. I trust us." Beatrice kissed her softly. "You know what I love most about us?" she said. "That we're no longer afraid of distance, of challenges, of anything, because we know we'll always choose to come back to each other." Lauren smiled. Always. The sound of the front door opening interrupted them. It was Sophie, who had started visiting them regularly after finally gathering the courage to divorce Charles 6 months ago. She now lived alone in a small apartment near the historic district and was discovering who she was outside the role of perfect wife. "Am I interrupting?" Sophie asked from below. "Never," Lauren responded. "Come up." Sophie appeared on the terrace with a bottle of wine and 3 glasses. "I thought we could celebrate," she said. "Today I signed the final divorce papers. I'm officially a free woman." The 3 toasted, and as the sun began to set over Charleston, they talked about future plans, about dreams, about everything they wanted to accomplish. Sophie was considering going back to school, maybe something related to art. Beatrice had plans to write a book about traditional restoration techniques. Lauren wanted to expand the firm, maybe hire an assistant. "Did you ever imagine we'd be here?" Sophie asked, looking at Lauren. "After everything that happened with Dad, after all those years of silence." Lauren shook her head. "Never. But I'm glad we are. I'm glad I had the courage to come back." "Dad would be proud," Sophie said quietly. "In the end, I think that's what he wanted. For you to be happy. It just took him too long to realize it." Lauren looked toward the city spreading out below, the cobblestone streets she knew so well, the church domes illuminated by the last rays of sun. This place that had been a source of so much pain was now her home. And the woman sitting beside her, the one who had waited 10 years, the one who had restored this house thinking of her, was her family. Not everything had been easy. There were still people in Charleston who murmured when they saw them walk by holding hands. There were still family members who didn't invite them to gatherings. There were still difficult days, arguments, moments of doubt. But there were also days like this, days of celebration, of community, of love that didn't ask permission. And that was more than enough. If you want the continuation of this story, write it in the comments, because that's the only way I'll know what you want. And don't forget that YouTube only prioritizes subscribers. So subscribe now, so you don't miss the next story that will make you believe in love and second chances. This is just the beginning.